It was a quiet afternoon in the neighborhood, the kind where the sun gently warms your back and the streets feel almost empty. The woman lived in a small, cozy house that she had made warm and welcoming. She didn't have a lot, but what she had, she shared with anyone who needed help. Her life wasn't glamorous. She worked long hours at a local store, sometimes more than she wanted, just to make sure she could pay the bills and have a little extra to help someone in need. People in the neighborhood respected her because she was kind and always willing to lend a hand, even to strangers. On that day, she was sitting on her porch, sipping tea and watching the world go by. That's when she noticed something unusual. Across the street, near an old fence that separated 2 yards, a young boy was sitting on the ground. He looked small for his age, with ragged clothes and messy hair. At first, she thought he was just playing outside, but something about the way he sat there hunched over made her uneasy. He wasn't moving around or laughing like children usually do. Instead, he kept looking over his shoulder as if he was scared of something, or someone. Curiosity and concern pushed her to pay closer attention. From her porch, she could see his arms. They were covered in bruises, dark and fading, some fresh and angry looking. Her heart tightened instantly. She had seen children with cuts and scrapes before, but these were different. They weren't accidents from playing. These were signs of someone hurting him. Her mind raced, but her heart knew what needed to be done. She slowly went inside her house, making sure not to scare him away. She called the local Child Protective Services line first, quietly explaining what she had seen. The person on the other end asked for details, and she gave them everything she could, from his description to the exact location where she saw him. They assured her that someone would come to investigate, but she also knew that the system could take time. She couldn't just sit and wait. She had to do more. Over the next few days, she watched the boy carefully from a distance, making sure he was okay. She noticed that he rarely spoke to anyone and flinched if someone got too close. One afternoon, she saw him being yelled at by a man in the yard next door. The man's voice was harsh, sharp, and full of anger. The boy shrank back and didn't make a sound. That was the moment she knew she couldn't just call someone else. She had to act herself, but she also had to be careful. She decided to approach him gently. The next day, she walked toward the fence slowly, holding out her hands in a calm, non-threatening way. "Hey," she said softly. "Are you okay?" The boy jumped and backed away, but there was something in her voice, something calm and kind that made him hesitate. She didn't push. She sat on the edge of her porch a little distance away and waited. "I won't hurt you," she said. "I just want to make sure you're safe." Days passed, and she continued this quiet approach. She brought small things to show she cared: an apple, a notebook, a pencil. Each time she left them near the fence without expecting him to take them. Slowly, he began to notice that someone was there for him, someone who wasn't angry or scary. The first time he took an apple from her hand, she didn't say anything. She just smiled, quietly letting him know that it was okay to trust her. It wasn't easy. The boy had lived with fear for a long time, and trust didn't come quickly. He had been hurt by someone who was supposed to protect him, and that pain ran deep. Some nights she would hear him crying softly outside and feel her heart break, wishing she could take all his pain away. She would sit on her porch talking to him gently, telling him stories about a safe place where no one could hurt him, where he could feel happy and loved. She started inviting him slowly into her home, one step at a time. At first, it was just for a few minutes, sitting at the kitchen table while she cooked. She didn't force conversation. She just let him be, offering comfort through small acts, pouring milk into a cup, letting him pick a snack, or letting him watch the sunlight dance on the walls. He began to relax in her presence. He didn't smile much yet, but he didn't flinch as much either. That was progress. One afternoon, as they were sitting quietly, he finally spoke. His voice was barely above a whisper. I'm scared," he said. She nodded, understanding completely. "I know," she replied gently. "It's okay to be scared. You're safe here with me. I won't let anyone hurt you." She didn't lecture or ask too many questions. She just let him talk, letting him release the fear he had been carrying alone for so long. Over time, the bond between them grew stronger. She became more than just a helper. She became someone he could trust, someone who could protect him when he had no one else. She helped him with schoolwork, read stories to him, and even taught him small skills like how to cook simple meals or fix a bicycle. Every day she showed him that there were people in the world who cared, people who could be kind without asking for anything in return. But it wasn't just about daily routines. She taught him lessons that went deeper than schoolwork. She taught him about courage, about standing up for yourself, and about the power of kindness. She never forced him to talk about the past too soon, but she encouraged him to dream about the future, to imagine a life where he could feel happy and safe. She believed in him even when he didn't believe in himself. The boy began to change slowly. His steps grew more confident. His eyes lost a bit of that constant fear, and he started to speak more openly. She could see the little signs, the way he laughed quietly when something was funny, the way he asked questions about the world around him. Every small moment felt like a victory. She knew that she couldn't erase the past, but she could help him create a new one. Despite the progress, she knew the bigger challenge was still ahead. He couldn't stay with her forever. She needed to find a way to get him into a safe home, a family that could provide stability and love. But for now, she focused on the present. She focused on being a constant source of safety and care, knowing that the trust they were building now would help him face whatever came next. One evening, as the sun dipped below the rooftops and painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, the boy sat on the porch next to her. He didn't say much, just rested his head on his knees and watched the colors change. She didn't speak either, just let him sit in peace. In that quiet moment, she realized that her small acts of care had begun to make a real difference. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was starting to feel hope. She didn't know what the future would hold, but she knew one thing clearly. No child should ever feel alone or unloved. And she had made a promise to herself that she would do everything she could to protect this boy, to help him feel safe, and to remind him that there was goodness in the world. She understood the power of compassion, and she was determined to let it guide every action she took. As night fell, she went inside her house, leaving a light on in the living room. She knew he would come in when he was ready. That night, the boy didn't cry as much. He didn't hide in fear. He slept with a little more peace than he had before, knowing someone was watching over him, someone who truly cared. And for the first time in a long time, he dreamed of a life where kindness and safety weren't just wishes, they were real. The next morning, the woman woke up earlier than usual. Her mind was full of thoughts about the boy. She couldn't stop thinking about his bruises, his fear, and how alone he must have felt all those years. She had made a small difference already, but she knew she had to do more. She couldn't just give him a few moments of safety each day and then let him return to a life of fear. Something had to change, and she was determined to be the one to make it happen. She started the day by preparing breakfast, something simple but warm. She set a plate of eggs and toast on the small table in the kitchen and poured a glass of orange juice. She wasn't sure if he would come inside right away, but she left the food on the counter with a gentle note. "Eat when you're ready. You're safe here." It wasn't much, but it was a start. It was a small gesture to show him that she cared and that he didn't have to face the world alone anymore. When he arrived, he hesitated at the doorway. His eyes were wide and he looked around nervously. But instead of running away, he stepped inside slowly. The woman smiled softly and gestured to the plate of food. "It's okay," she said gently. "You don't have to say anything. Just eat." He sat down quietly and started eating, still cautious but trusting her just enough to stay. After breakfast, she sat with him at the table, quietly observing him. She noticed the way he held his hands tightly together, as if he were trying to keep himself from shaking. She could see the fear in his eyes, the same fear she had noticed from the very first day. But she also saw a spark of curiosity. He was watching her, taking in her calm and gentle manner, and slowly beginning to believe that someone could care for him without hurting him. She decided it was time to start teaching him some small skills, not just for survival, but for confidence. She began with simple tasks, organizing the small kitchen, learning how to make sandwiches and folding laundry. At first he was hesitant, unsure if he could do anything right. But she encouraged him patiently, never raising her voice or showing frustration. "It's okay," she said. "Take your time. You're learning, and that's what matters." Gradually, he started to follow her instructions, and the small successes gave him a sense of accomplishment. Beyond practical skills, she also wanted to nurture his mind. She started reading to him in the afternoons, stories about courage, kindness, and hope. At first, he would sit silently, listening but not speaking. Over time, he began asking questions, curious about the characters and their choices. She answered each question thoughtfully, never rushing, always encouraging him to think for himself. These moments, though small, were building his confidence. He was learning that his voice mattered, and that he could trust someone enough to ask questions without fear. Evenings were a quiet time, when the world outside seemed calmer. She would light a small lamp and let him sit nearby while she worked on her own tasks. Sometimes he would watch her, fascinated by the way she moved around her home with purpose. Sometimes he would speak softly, sharing little stories or asking about things he had seen outside. Each conversation, no matter how brief, was a step forward. She never pushed him to share more than he was ready for, knowing that trust could not be forced. The woman also reached out to local support systems discreetly. She called social workers and community volunteers, explaining the situation without revealing too much to protect the boy's privacy. She wanted to make sure that if anything went wrong, there would be help available immediately. The process was slow, but she remained patient. She knew that bureaucracy and red tape could not compare to the urgency of giving a child safety and love. One afternoon, she noticed a change in him. He was playing with a small toy he had found outside, smiling faintly as he moved it across the floor. It was a tiny moment, but to her it was monumental. That small smile meant he was beginning to feel a sense of normalcy, a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. She knelt down beside him, letting him see that she was sharing in his happiness without taking over. "I like that smile," she said softly. "You're safe here, and it's okay to feel happy." She also started teaching him about boundaries, something crucial for a child who had experienced abuse. She explained that it was okay to say no, to tell someone when something didn't feel right, and to protect himself. At first, he struggled with these concepts. He had been conditioned to obey and stay quiet, to accept pain without protest. But she patiently showed him that there was another way to live, a way where he could feel safe, speak up, and be respected. Her efforts extended beyond her home. She encouraged him to interact safely with the world outside. Short walks in the neighborhood, carefully supervised, allowed him to see that the streets were not only places of danger. They could be places of joy, curiosity, and connection. Each encounter with neighbors or friends reinforced the idea that kindness existed in the world, that he could trust some people, and that not everyone was out to harm him. As the days turned into weeks, their bond grew stronger. He began to confide in her, slowly sharing bits of his past. He didn't reveal everything at once, but every story he told was a sign of growing trust. The woman listened without judgment, providing comfort and reassurance. She made him understand that he was not at fault for what had happened to him, that he deserved love, care, and safety. Those words were new to him, and yet he clung to them like a lifeline. One evening after dinner, he finally asked a question that surprised her. "Will I ever have a home where I'm not scared?" he whispered. She took his small hands in hers and looked into his eyes. "Yes," she said firmly. "You will, and I'm going to help make sure that happens. You deserve a place where you feel safe every single day." Her words were not promises without action. They were a commitment. She knew she couldn't replace a family, but she could guide him toward one that would love and protect him. The woman also prepared herself emotionally. She knew that the path ahead would be difficult. There would be obstacles, setbacks, and moments when the boy might retreat into fear, but she stayed patient and committed. Each day was a building block, each act of kindness a foundation for the future. She understood that the smallest gestures, offering food, a kind word, a safe space, could create lasting change in a child's life. As the days passed, the boy began to show signs of growth. He laughed quietly at small jokes, asked questions about the world, and even helped with small chores around the house. Every step forward was a victory, not just for him but for the woman who had devoted herself to his safety and healing. She celebrated each milestone privately, knowing that progress was sometimes invisible to the outside world, but deeply meaningful to those involved. One rainy afternoon, as the drops tapped gently against the window, they sat together on the couch, wrapped in a blanket. He rested his head on her shoulder, a sign of trust that he had not shown before. She stroked his hair gently, feeling a mix of sadness and hope. Sadness for what he had endured, hope for the future she was helping him build. "It's okay," she whispered. "You're not alone anymore. You don't have to be afraid." He closed his eyes, letting the words sink in, letting himself feel the comfort he had long been denied. The woman knew that her actions were creating more than safety. They were planting seeds of resilience. She was showing him that the world could be gentle, that there were people who would care without expecting anything in return, and that he had value and dignity. These lessons were far more powerful than any rules or instructions. They were lessons in life itself. She continued to care for him with unwavering dedication. She prepared meals, helped with schoolwork, guided him in daily tasks, and offered emotional support. She also made sure he had opportunities to experience small joys: a walk in the park, a visit to the library, or a quiet afternoon playing with a toy. Each experience reinforced the idea that life could be safe and enjoyable, that he could feel happiness without fear. Weeks turned into months, and the boy continued to grow stronger emotionally and mentally. The bruises on his arms faded, replaced by a quiet confidence and a sense of security. He began to trust that the world could be kind, and that he could have a future without fear. The woman's consistent care and guidance were shaping his life in ways that would last forever. By the end of this part of the journey, the woman had done more than provide temporary relief. She had given him hope, safety, and the foundation for a new life. She had become a guardian, a mentor, and a steady presence in a world that had once been cruel and frightening. She had shown him that even in the darkest moments, someone could care, someone could act, and someone could make a real difference. And though the path ahead was still uncertain, they both knew that they had taken the first steps toward a brighter, safer, and more hopeful future, a future where trust, love, and compassion could heal even the deepest wounds. Time passed quietly in the small house, the kind of time that feels full even when nothing dramatic seems to happen. The woman and the boy had settled into a rhythm, a life of small comforts and growing trust. She could see the change in him every day. His laughter was lighter, his steps more confident, and the fear that had once clouded his eyes was slowly disappearing. He began to believe just a little that the world could be kind, but the woman knew that her home could only be a temporary refuge. She had done everything she could to make him feel safe, but he needed more than just her care. He needed a permanent home, a family who could offer stability, love, and guidance in ways she couldn't provide forever. It was a thought that made her heart heavy. She loved him like family already, but she also knew that holding on to him indefinitely could limit his growth. He needed a future beyond her doorstep. The process to find him a safe home began quietly. She reached out to the child welfare system she had contacted earlier, sharing what she had learned about the boy's personality, strengths, and needs. She spoke about his courage, his curiosity, and the ways he had started to trust again. She wanted the people in charge to understand that he was more than just a victim. He was a child who could thrive with the right support. When the social worker came to observe him, the woman stayed nearby, guiding him gently without taking over. She encouraged him to show his skills, to talk about his favorite books, and to share small stories about his life. At first he was nervous, unsure if this person was someone he could trust. But the woman's calm presence reassured him. He learned to smile for the social worker, to speak up when asked, and to show the resilience that had begun to grow inside him. It wasn't easy for the woman, emotionally. She had grown attached to him, and the thought of letting him go was painful. She spent nights thinking about how she could prepare him for the transition, how she could help him feel ready for a life beyond her home. She realized that while she couldn't protect him from everything in the world, she could give him the tools and confidence to face it. One afternoon, after weeks of careful planning, the woman received news that a foster family had been found. The family seemed kind and patient, with children of their own and a home that could offer love and stability. She met with them beforehand, sharing everything she knew about the boy, the fears he carried, the progress he had made, and the ways he had begun to believe in himself again. She hoped that they would be able to continue the work she had started, to nurture him in ways she couldn't. The day of the transition was both quiet and full of emotion. The woman prepared his favorite breakfast just as she always did, and made sure he had all the small things that made him comfortable: a blanket, a toy, and a notebook. She tried to explain what was happening in words he could understand. "You're going to a place where you can be safe every day," she said gently. "You're going to have a family who can love and take care of you. I'll still be here and I'll always care about you." He listened quietly, nodding but not speaking much. Fear and excitement mixed in his eyes, a reflection of the complicated emotions he felt. He had learned to trust the woman, and that trust made him believe in the possibility of a better life. Still, leaving the only home where he had felt safe was difficult. He clung to the small comfort of her words and the warmth of her presence. When the foster family arrived, the woman stayed close, introducing him and helping him feel comfortable. She watched as they interacted, her heart heavy but hopeful. She could see that the family genuinely wanted to help him, and that reassured her. She held his hand for a moment longer than necessary, letting him know that it was okay to feel nervous. "It's a big step," she whispered. "But you're strong and you can do this." The ride to the new home was quiet. The boy sat in the back seat staring out the window at the familiar streets passing by. The woman sat beside him, gently holding his hand, letting him feel the steady reassurance she always offered. She told him stories about brave children who had faced difficult challenges and found happiness, hoping he could see himself in those stories. He listened quietly, absorbing her words like a shield against his lingering fears. When they arrived at the foster home, the boy hesitated at the door. The woman knelt beside him, speaking softly. "It's okay to be scared," she said. "This is a new beginning. You'll have people who care about you, people who will protect you in a place where you can grow. You are ready for this." Her voice was calm and steady, filled with a warmth that only comes from deep care. The foster parents welcomed him gently, giving him space to adjust while showing that they were ready to provide love and safety. They had prepared his room with small touches, a soft bed, books, and toys that she knew he liked. The woman smiled quietly, seeing that he was in good hands. She could feel a mix of relief and sadness. Relief that he would be safe, sadness that he was leaving her home, the place where they had shared so many small, meaningful moments. The boy spent the first day exploring his new home slowly, taking in each detail and learning to navigate this unfamiliar environment. The woman stayed nearby for a little while, helping him settle in and reassuring him that he could always come to her if he needed support. She encouraged him to speak to the foster parents, to share his feelings, and to begin building trust in them. It was a delicate process requiring patience and understanding from everyone involved. That evening, as she walked back to her own home, the woman reflected on the journey they had taken together. She remembered the first day she had noticed him sitting alone and frightened, the small steps of trust they had built, and the moments of laughter and learning that had come after. She realized that her role had been more than just a protector. It had been a guide, helping him to see that the world could offer safety, love, and hope. She knew that their connection would not end with this separation. The bond they had built was deep, formed through months of care, patience, and understanding. Even though he was leaving her home, he carried with him the lessons she had taught, the trust she had nurtured, and the love she had shown. She believed that these foundations would help him thrive in his new environment, giving him the confidence to face challenges and embrace opportunities. Over the following weeks, she stayed in touch with the foster family, checking in on his progress without overwhelming him. She received small updates, smiles, stories of new achievements, and moments of joy that reassured her that he was adjusting well. Each update was a reminder that her efforts had made a lasting difference, that the care she had provided had prepared him for this new chapter in his life. She also continued her own life, helping others in the neighborhood, always carrying the quiet satisfaction of knowing that she had changed one life profoundly. But the boy remained in her thoughts, a reminder of the power of kindness, patience, and courage. She understood that her role had been temporary, but the impact of her actions would last a lifetime. One day she received a letter from the foster parents. They wrote about the boy's progress, describing how he had started to laugh more openly, how he was excelling in school, and how he was forming friendships. They mentioned how much he talked about her, the woman who had believed in him when no one else did. Reading the letter, she felt a mix of pride and humility. She had not done anything extraordinary, yet the effect of her love and care was extraordinary in his life. Even though parting was painful, the woman knew that this was the right step for him. She had given him stability, taught him trust, and provided love when he needed it most. Now she could watch him grow from a distance, confident that he had the tools and support to face the world with courage. She realized that sometimes love means knowing when to let go, to allow someone to continue their journey in a new place where they can flourish. As months turned into years, the memories of their time together stayed vivid in her mind. She remembered the small victories, the first smile, the first laugh, the quiet moments of trust. She remembered how he had begun to believe in himself and in the goodness of the world. Those memories were a testament to the profound impact that one person's care could have on another's life. The separation had not weakened their connection. It had strengthened it in a different way. She had given him roots, and now he had a chance to grow wings. She understood that the love she had shown would continue to guide him, even from afar. She had created a safe foundation upon which he could build a life filled with hope, kindness, and resilience. And though she missed him, she took comfort in the knowledge that he was no longer alone. He had a home, a family, and the skills to navigate the world safely. He had hope, a sense of self-worth, and a chance to experience life as it was meant to be, full of opportunities, love, and safety. She knew that her work had not ended, but that it had taken a new form, one where she could watch quietly, knowing that the seeds of care she had planted would continue to grow. Years passed quietly, and life continued for the woman in her small, cozy house. The neighborhood still had its familiar streets and faces, and she continued to do the things she had always done, helping neighbors, offering small kindnesses, and living a life guided by compassion. But the boy she had once cared for never left her thoughts entirely. She often wondered how he was doing, if he had found happiness, and if he still remembered the moments they had shared. The woman did not expect to hear from him. After all, he had been placed in a safe home, surrounded by a family who could offer him stability and love. She had done her part, and the rest was up to the world. Yet a part of her could not help but hope that the small seed of care she had planted had grown into something meaningful in his life. Meanwhile, the boy, now a young man, was growing in ways that even he had not imagined possible when he first found refuge in the woman's home. The years of fear and abuse that had shaped his early life had not disappeared entirely, but the care he had received had given him a foundation to build on. He had learned to trust again, to believe in kindness, and to see that life could hold more than just pain and fear. In school, he worked hard. He focused on his studies, determined to create a future for himself that was different from the past he had endured. Teachers and classmates began to notice a quiet strength in him, a determination to succeed despite challenges. He excelled not just academically but also in personal growth. He learned how to navigate friendships, how to stand up for himself when necessary, and how to show compassion to others who were struggling. The lessons the woman had taught him stayed with him. Her gentle words, her patient guidance, and her unwavering belief in his potential became a part of his character. He remembered the small victories, the moments she encouraged him to take pride in his accomplishments, no matter how minor they seemed. He carried those memories with him, using them as motivation to be kind, resilient, and courageous in his own life. As the young man grew, he began to understand the weight of what had been done for him. He realized that without her intervention, he might have continued to suffer in silence, trapped in fear and pain. He thought often about the woman who had risked her own comfort and safety to help him, who had believed in him when no one else did. Her actions had changed the course of his life, and he felt a deep sense of gratitude that went beyond words. He worked hard not only to succeed for himself, but also to honor the kindness he had received. He volunteered in his community, helping children who were struggling, mentoring young people who needed guidance, and offering support to those who were lost or afraid. In every act, he remembered the woman who had first shown him that trust and care could exist in the world. Her example shaped his own approach to life, teaching him that even small acts of compassion could ripple outward in ways that could never be fully measured. Despite his accomplishments, he always carried a quiet longing to reconnect with the woman who had changed his life. He often thought about visiting her, about sharing with her the person he had become and the life he was building. But he hesitated. He didn't want to intrude or impose. He feared that perhaps she had moved on, that she might not remember him as vividly as he remembered her. Yet, the desire to express his gratitude and to show her the impact she had made remained strong. Meanwhile, the woman continued her life in quiet ways. She helped neighbors with errands, tended to her small garden, and continued her daily routines. She never stopped caring for others, always noticing when someone needed help, always offering a kind word or a gesture of support. Yet there were moments when she found herself thinking about the boy. She wondered how he was doing, whether he was happy, and whether he had found a life filled with safety and love. She never imagined that one day he would come back into her life in a way she could never have expected. Years later, the young man had achieved stability and success in his own life. He had built a career, formed meaningful relationships, and cultivated a sense of purpose that he carried proudly. But no matter how far he had come, he never forgot the woman who had been there when he had nothing. She had been the first person to truly see him, to recognize his worth, and to give him hope. The impact of her care had become a guiding force in his life, shaping his decisions, his values, and his character. He made the decision to reconnect. He wanted to see the woman, to thank her in person, and to let her know the difference she had made. It was not an easy decision. He felt nervous, unsure how she would react, and worried that time might have changed things. Yet, the desire to express his gratitude outweighed the fear. He knew that her actions had given him a second chance at life, and he wanted to honor that in the most meaningful way possible. On a bright afternoon, he arrived in her neighborhood. He had rehearsed what he would say, thought carefully about how he would approach her, but nothing could truly prepare him for the moment of standing at her door. His heart pounded in his chest as he raised his hand and knocked, uncertain but filled with hope. The woman opened the door, surprised to see a young man standing there. He looked at her with a mixture of nerves and determination, and in that moment, recognition sparked in her eyes. Something about him, the way he carried himself, the light in his eyes, reminded her of the small, frightened boy she had once cared for. He spoke first, his voice steady but emotional. "I don't know if you remember me," he said, "but years ago, you helped me when I had no one. You saved me, and I wanted to thank you." The woman's eyes filled with tears as she realized who he was. All the memories, the small victories, the laughter, the moments of trust came rushing back. She felt a mix of relief, pride, and joy. The boy she had once nurtured had grown into a strong, kind, and confident young man. They embraced, and in that hug, years of distance and uncertainty melted away. He told her about his life, about the challenges he had faced, and about the ways he had carried her lessons with him. He shared his successes, his growth, and the ways he had tried to give back to the world in gratitude for what she had done. Every word was filled with sincerity, every story a testament to the power of her kindness. The woman listened quietly, tears streaming down her face. She was overwhelmed with emotion, knowing that her efforts had truly mattered. She had never expected such a reunion, never imagined seeing the young man who had once been so small and afraid standing confidently before her. Yet here he was, a living testament to the impact of compassion, patience, and care. They spent hours talking that day, reminiscing about the past and sharing hopes for the future. The young man explained how her guidance had helped him trust, believe in himself, and navigate the world with confidence. He described the ways he had applied her lessons in his life, helping others and making choices that reflected the values she had taught him. Each story reinforced the truth that her actions had created a ripple effect far beyond what she could have imagined. The woman felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She realized that the love and care she had offered, even in small ways, had been transformative. She understood that every kind word, every gesture of patience, every moment of trust-building mattered. The boy she had once nurtured was now living proof that one person's compassion could change the trajectory of a life. As the afternoon turned to evening, they continued to share stories and laughter. The bond between them, forged years earlier through trust, care, and resilience, was as strong as ever. The woman marveled at the young man he had become, strong, kind, compassionate, and driven. She felt proud, not only of him, but also of the journey they had shared, a journey that had shaped both their lives in profound ways. Before he left, the young man made a promise. "I want to make sure your kindness continues to touch lives," he said. "I want to help others the way you helped me." The woman smiled, knowing that he would carry the legacy of her compassion forward. Her role in his life had been pivotal, but now he was ready to create his own impact, inspired by the example she had set. That evening, after he left, the woman sat quietly in her home, reflecting on the years that had passed. She realized that life was full of unexpected turns, moments where small actions could create enormous change. She understood that even in the darkest times, hope could exist, and that one person's courage and kindness could transform another's life forever. She felt gratitude, not just for the reunion, but for the journey itself, for the chance to make a difference, for the lessons learned, and for the bond that had endured across time and distance. She knew that the world could be harsh and unpredictable, but she also knew that love, patience, and compassion could leave a lasting imprint that no challenge could erase. And so, life went on, filled with quiet satisfaction and hope. The woman continued to care for her community, her heart full of the knowledge that one act of kindness had changed a life in a way that would ripple far beyond her reach. The young man, carrying her lessons in his heart, went on to make a difference in the lives of others, proving that the power of compassion could echo through time, creating a chain of hope that no one could ever break. Years had passed since the boy, now a grown man, had left the small cozy house where he had first learned to feel safe. The woman often thought about him, wondering how he was doing, imagining the life he might have built, and hoping he had found happiness and stability. She had continued her quiet life of helping others, offering small kindnesses to her neighbors, and making a difference in her community in ways big and small. But a part of her heart always carried the memory of the boy she had once nurtured, the child who had needed her courage and compassion to survive. The man had grown into someone strong, kind, and thoughtful. The experiences he had endured in his early years had left marks, but they had also shaped him into someone resilient and determined. He had worked hard to build a life where he could thrive, studying, learning, and eventually achieving success in ways he had once thought impossible. But no matter how far he had come, he never forgot the woman who had saved him, who had offered safety and hope when he had no one else. For months he had planned quietly. He wanted to visit her, to express the depth of his gratitude and to show her how profoundly her kindness had impacted his life. He thought carefully about how he would approach her, about the words he would say, and about the right moment to knock on her door. Every detail mattered to him because he wanted this moment to reflect the sincerity of his feelings, the immense respect and love he had carried with him for years. Finally, the day came. The man found himself standing in front of the familiar, small house, the one where he had first felt safety, warmth, and care. His heart raced as he lifted his hand and knocked gently on the door. Each knock seemed louder than it was, echoing in his chest. He felt a mix of excitement, nervousness, and anticipation. This was the moment he had imagined countless times, the moment to reconnect with the person who had given him a second chance at life. The door opened and the woman appeared, surprised to see a tall, confident man standing there. At first, she didn't recognize him immediately, but there was something familiar in his eyes, something she could not forget. The same quiet strength, the same spark that had been there when he was a frightened boy. Recognition came slowly, and then all at once. Tears welled up in her eyes as she realized who he was. The boy she had once protected, nurtured, and guided had returned to her life. He smiled nervously, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I don't know if you remember me," he said softly, "but years ago you helped me when I had no one. You saved me. I've wanted to thank you for so long." The woman's heart ached with a mix of joy and pride. She stepped forward slowly, reaching out her hands to him, and he embraced her. It was a hug filled with years of separation, trust, care, and unspoken gratitude. For a long moment, they stood there quietly, holding on to each other. The woman's mind flooded with memories. The small, scared boy sitting on the porch. The quiet conversations, the first smiles, and the tiny victories that had marked the beginning of his